Thank you so much, Nsundeni. I can't really get used to the digital applause. I'm just waiting for people to clap, so it's quite awkward. But thank you very much, Nsundeni. Firstly, let me just take this opportunity just to thank God for this day, for also allowing me to come this far, so I'm able to share my journey with other people. Let me also take the opportunity to thank the leadership of the church, Pastor Toto and Pastor Mancha. Also just to thank the leadership of CJC and also the Career Development Corner team. I would like also just to greet my beautiful wife who is watching with my son from home. To the family and friends that are watching, thank you for joining in to give me this opportunity just to share my story. As Nsundeni has said, my name is Mabala Zakaria Kwakwa. I'm the co-founder of a company called Chillers on Wheels and the CEO. And if you're wondering what Chillers on Wheels does, so we are the number one guys in the number two business. So if you understand that, then you will get an idea of basically what we do. Mabala Zakaria Kwakwa. I'm born and bred in Seshego. It's a township in the Limpopo province, just outside of Polokwane. That is where I was born and bred. I attended my primary school, Go Seshego, my high school as well. Basically, I was raised by my grandmother, who I stayed with for almost 21 years of my life. I have three siblings. I've got an older sister and two brothers. Let me just, colleagues, just start to family. Let me just share with you. Sorry. Remember that some of us are in a different space, so we're always addressing people as colleagues. My apologies. Let me just share my story. My story starts in Seshego, in a two-bedroom house, formerly known as RDPs in Zone 2. In the early 90s, when I was just 6 years old, from as far as I can remember. My entrepreneurial journey starts there in that household where my grandmother used to sell alcohol, cigarettes, and beers. That is where my story starts. So I've basically been trading for as long as I can remember. And basically that's where the entrepreneurial spirit comes from, when I grew up, I think looking back, I would think that I had it the hardest as a child, because obviously running a business from that early age, you could understand how hard it was, because when other children were playing, basically what we were doing is working. So I remember my grandmother would wake us up early in the morning to first clean. After you clean, you have to go buy beers or cold drinks for the guys who are coming in the morning to drink. When you come back home for break, so I stayed very close to the school. When you come back home for break, you still had to go buy the beers that the guys drank during that time, and then you had to go buy break time. After school, the same thing. So basically, most of my life has always been when other people were playing. I've been mostly working. When other people had that free time, I've basically been working. And that is how my grandmother literally raised us. And that is where my entrepreneurial journey really starts, from as far as I can remember. I studied basically electrical engineering at the local FET. And I started working for Eskom, I think at the age of about 22. But then when you start working without any financial education whatsoever, you sort of get yourself into a lot of things. So the first thing I did when I started working, basically, I renovated my mom's house for a while. And then I thought, okay, now I'm done with the house. Let me buy myself a present. So I went and bought myself a sports car at the age of 22, not knowing that I'm getting myself into a lot of trouble by doing that. So by buying the sports car, literally the first month, remember, I'm a learner driver at that time. I've never driven a car. I've only driven truck. I go driving school. So here I am in a sports car driving around. I get my first breakdown. The car needs about 40,000 rand. The time I'm working at Eskom Holdings, and I'm barely just getting by, you know. So the car breaks down. When it breaks down, it needs about 40,000 rand to fix. I don't have the money. I go get a loan. I fix the car. The car is fixed. It drives again, but then I'm stuck in the loan. Initially, I was stuck in a red race. Red race basically means that I'm living hand to mouth. Every month, when the salary comes in, it literally just goes through the bank to whoever that I owed money for loans and clothing accounts and all of those things. And then later I just said, but what can I do to sort of generate extra revenue so that I am able to survive? Because at the rate that I'm going, I don't think I'll be able to survive. And that is when basically Chillers on Wheels was born. So I looked around and said, but what business can I start? At the time, I was working at Eskom Holdings, like I said. But I asked myself, what business can I start that will help me at least to stay afloat, you know? And then that is when I looked around, and my sister was doing catering, and there was this container man on wheels that they kept renting out every weekend to put in the spinach, to put in all the veggies when they were doing their catering. So I said, Mara, if someone gets one of these trailers, it means that my sister doesn't have to go and rent these trailers anywhere else. She will get them from Kohai. So that's how the idea initially started. Jet Chillers on. I had the idea, and then lucky enough, I with a friend who's currently my business partner. And then I sold him the idea to say, in fact, there's this thing that my sister always rents out. I feel like it can benefit us, you know. Then my friend, my business partner was like, no, let's go, let's do it, you know, let's do it. We can do this. Then we sort of waited for like 4 months to put the money together. Then we just decided, look, man, let's go to the bank. Let's get this money. Let's go buy these trailers. And basically, that is how Chillers on Wheels started almost 10 years ago. We're going for our 11th year with an investment of 50,000 each. That is how we started. So when we started, basically, at Chillers on Wheels, we had to sort of work 2 jobs. So basically, you work your 8 to 4. When you knock off, it's either you're going to wash the fridges, you're going to do a delivery, or you're doing maintenance. Of which our skills came handy as electricians. So fixing became a bit more easier for us, you know. So that is how basically we started with the trailers, with the 2 trailers. So he bought one and I bought one. Then we started a company called Chillers on Wheels, you know, and the name comes actually from my partner who was like, no, Chillers on Wheels. We'll be moving chillers, delivering chillers, so Chillers on Wheels. And we're like, okay. The idea started to go McDonald's, go Polokwane, go Konachobla, and I'm not sure what the name is. But yeah, that's where it started. And we're like, no, Chillers on Wheels, Chillers on Wheels. Then basically that's how the brand started here, Chillers on Wheels. And then we started renting out toilet fridges to funerals, to weddings. And every single time we went to a wedding or a funeral, clients would ask for toilets. So don't you guys have toilets? Don't you guys have toilets? And in the beginning, you know, this thing of toilets, we thought, we don't want to get dirty, you know. We like nice things, we like finer things. Why would we want to get into toilets, you know? And as time went by, the market just kept requesting us to get these toilets, you know, toilets, and we would run out of toilets to rent from people, you know. And then that is when one day we just took a decision to say, no, we really need to look into this thing of toilets. So what we did is that we became very strategic about it, where we sort of started renting out toilets from other guys who had the toilets but didn't really have the market. So what we did is that we sat down with those guys and then we gave them business for about a good 2 years, basically, whereby in those 2 years, I think the rental of a toilet was about 2.5. And we would rent out this toilet from these guys at 2,000 rent. And then we would keep the 500 and sort of give them the 2.5, you know. And we kept that going for some time, renting the toilets out from these guys, having to collect them, having to maintain them, and just for a mere 500 from the whole deal. But the aim was to give us more experience in the market and obviously to build a clientele. I think a few months later, what then transpired was that we initially sat down with those guys that we were renting toilets from, and we said to them, guys, we want to do business with you, but we had one thing that we asked of them, which was to let us brand chillers on wheels on their products, which was their toilets, so that when we deliver, it makes sense. Because most of the time when we delivered our fridges, it didn't make sense that the fridge was chillers on wheels, but the toilet was something else. So those guys sort of agreed to get into that deal. And then we sort of branded all the trailers chillers on wheels. So the advantage of that was those guys stayed in different areas. So basically, if you were driving around Seshego, you would see a chillers on wheels trailer almost in every zone, but that didn't belong to us. So we sort of capitalized on the 500 that we were getting from each and every person, to a point that we had 4 or 5 guys that we were working with, meaning that from the whatever amount of money we're making from the fridges, we are now making an extra of about 2.5, But from there, that is when the brand really grew, because now people started calling us, because obviously with these new guys coming on board, they thought, no, but right now their business is very big. They have a lot of trailers. That is when we actually ventured into the festival space, where we now had to do big festivals, about 10,000 people, 5,000 people. I remember we started with the first big event that we did was DSTV iRock. I think we did it maybe 2017, 2018. And we didn't even have a single trailer, but we had 15 trailers that were on site. And most of them were branded chillers on wheels, and some of them were unbranded. But literally, we had to work the whole night. I remember going through the crowd with a bucket, at that early age, when our peers were dancing and enjoying. I remember, the feeling of wanting to hide from your peers because you were so ashamed that, what am I doing? Get some bucket in this busy festival where else people were enjoying. And at the time, I think, guys, we almost had 10 people working with us throughout the night, 10 ladies. We had printed T-shirts to give to those ladies, chillers on wheels, chillers on wheels. And at that time, we didn't even have one trailer. Just to fast forward the story, we sort of parted ways with the guys that we're renting trailers from, because we couldn't manage them anymore, and the quality that they were giving to us and to the clients was not, we couldn't manage it anymore. So we sort of had to let them go. But by the time we let them go, I think we had about 10 to 15 trailers of our own now. And we were sort of growing in the toilet space. So, but I think, Chillers on Wheels sort of took a turn when we ventured into the formal market of the business, because we sort of focused, when we started, we focused in the informal market, where most of it was just the funeral, the party, and weddings. And then when we sort of got into the corporate space of it, that is when we really saw God's grace upon the business, because we sort of formalized the business, started building things like websites, started having our own telephone line, started having our social media pages. And that is when the business really took off. But I'd just like to speak to the issue of working while you have a business. And I think that's what a lot of young people are currently doing, And that was a very tough period for us, because I think that was the testing phase also of the business, because we literally had to bend our backs. I remember there would be orders sometimes. My partner was working Kodendron, and I was working Komukopani, And there'll be orders and areas like Messina, where we'd have to knock off at 4 o'clock and drive all the way to Messina and come back. And in the morning, you have to be back at work. And, the amount of sacrifice that it took in those years, I think for the first 5 years of the business, we were not getting paid. We didn't get a salary. So our agreement was that every single cent that we make from the business, we will take it back into the business. So we're not drawing any salary. The sports car that I had to sell it. I remember I traded the sports car in for a buggy. I just got there and said, guys, take this car and give me a buggy. So now we had two buggies that we were working with. And, it was very tough. But initially we ended up resigning from Eskom Holdings. But just the grace of God upon my journey personally was just amazing, because I remember when I got to Mokopane, I said to the security guard, or God says to me that I will not be here for 5 years, And the day I left, I think he reminded me that, do you remember when you came here, you said you wouldn't be here for 5 years. My journey of resigning from Eskom Holdings comes after one day I wake up. So I stayed with my aunt for a while, and I used to hitchhike to work, I think also for a good 5 years, because the buggies were busy working. So we had to hitchhike to work and leave the buggies here with some of the employees. I think at the time we had 3 or 4 employees. But, the journey of resigning as well, it was quite a tough journey, because, I remember every year on the first, when my mom would ask, what do you want to achieve this year? My first thing would be, I want to resign from work, because there's this thing that I believe in so much, and God is saying to me, this will make a difference. This will change lives of people, if you go into it. And for a good 3-4 years, my mom was like, Sagimona, do you want to stop working? Do you want to leave a good paying job for this thing? And I said to her, Mama, I believe in this thing, and I believe this thing will be where we want it to be. So as I went to resigning, I wake up one morning, I go to the hiking spot, and then God says to me, go to the office, And then at the time we had a small Nyana office there with a receptionist, and I got there and I sort of waited for people to come in, and God just said to me that it's time to move to the next phase, And at that time, it didn't make sense, because I was doing so well at work. I was the president of NUM in the youth energy sector. I was also a shop steward. I was moving up the ranks, and it didn't really make sense why I would resign now. My plan was actually to resign 2030, but I ended up resigning in 2020. So when God showed me the vision, it was hard, but I believed with all my heart that God speaks, I need to listen, and my conviction was so clear. I remember even some employees, I'll tell them that this position, someone else could do better at this, because my heart is not here. So there I am, I resign from work. My partner also decides we are resigning. We resign from work. We think this business is going to work for us. There we are, I resign, we leave everything. And, just after we resigned, COVID hits, 2020 January or so, COVID hits, And when COVID hit, it was an opportunity for the devil really to come and tell us, where is that God that you serve, I remember some of our colleagues were even writing in WhatsApp groups saying that, but the conviction was so clear. But also, I'd like to take this opportunity also just to acknowledge my wife for the role that she played in my resigning, because she was the one person who really pushed me and who really encouraged me to say, I can see your vision, I see how hard you work on this thing, and I believe that you can make something out of this. And, that really inspired me and pushed me to go and resign. So come January, COVID hits. Everyone is sort of saying, where were you going? We are sort of feeling like, yo, God, what now? You said we must go. You said it's time for us to move to the next phase. We are sitting there with about 5 employees, and we sort of went back to God, and God just said, keep going. I think COVID hit. We went through, I think, first 3 months. And then after that, we just saw the grace of God coming on our business, just covering us. We saw big projects coming in. We saw hospitals, sanitation coming in. We saw school sanitation coming in. So it's sort of during that time, that is when we really saw God's grace when everyone was really hoping for the worst, and that's how the business sort of grew. And in that space, we have really managed to grow the business and position it as one of the leading mobile toilet hires in the province, of which we are pushing that by 2030. We are hoping to be one of the biggest mobile toilet suppliers and manufacturers in the Southern Africa. All right. So I think, guys, the journey of entrepreneurship is honestly not an easy journey. Looking back at where we come from hardships of not sleeping, of sacrificing a lot of things just to make sure that you move to the next level of the business. After 10 years, last year, I think, was the first year where I really had an Easter and a Christmas, because most of the time we will be working, we'll be trying to achieve this vision that we've got for this business. But fast forward to 2024, 2025, we've just seen so much growth in the business. We've moved currently from those 5 employees in 2020 to about 85 employees. We have actually managed to acquire our own land in 2022, where God gave us land, and when we got to that land, we said we are going to store toilets here, because we had now so many projects that we had bought toilets for. And we said, and we came here to this land, we went to the king and said, we want land to put toilets. And then we came here, and then God sort of said, this is your new home, And that is where currently I'm sitting, where we have built our own offices, our own sort of warehouse that we've built in the 3 years, And we have just experienced so much growth in terms of the business itself, the caliber of people that are coming into the business, the amount of clients that we're getting. We are so blessed that we even work in areas that it wouldn't be normal for us to work. For example, one of our biggest clients is actually CC Church, but we serve clients like your Anglo-American, your DPS Group, and other big clients. And I think, with the vision that God has put in us, I remember I used to pass at smelters and say a short prayer. In Africa, we call it a skitlebe, where you just pass and do a small prayer. And I would say, God, one day, I would pass Moria going to Zanin and say to God, one day I'll see Chillers on Wheels toilets, go Moria. One day I'll see myself doing sanitation for 1 million people. And today we live in that reality of having clients of that caliber. But it has all come through the grace of God, and also spending time trying to understand your market. So my advice to young people is spend time in trying to understand your markets. I think the biggest mistake that we make is that we want to be everywhere. We want to be jack of all trades. But in what I've seen is that people who are doing that are mostly people who have started something big first, and then they sort of ventured out into other things at a later stage. But I think what I'm seeing is that, spending time in the market really allows you to get to know the people in the market, to understand your market and understand your customers and what they need and where the market is going towards. Unlike when you are in too many places at the same time, it hardly gives you a chance to really understand your market. Like we have grown so much in the sanitation space that we are currently a member of the Association of Mobile Portable Toilets Africa, and we are currently also busy affiliating with the International Association of Portable Toilets. But we have just seen so much grace in terms of what God is doing through this business. Even traveling to Germany to meet other manufacturers. We are fortunate enough to have them, some of them come and visit us last week, actually, where we are in talks of actually starting to manufacture our own business, our own toilets, our own line of toilets that we can sell throughout the African continent and to Europe as well. because we've realized that the biggest challenge about being at the top of the value chain, at the bottom of the value chain, is that it's too many of us. But at the top of most of our value chains, there's only three or four people who are four companies that are at the top. So our goal currently is basically to slowly move up the value chain, but while creating sustainability and creating sustainable jobs for our people. And I think the beauty of entrepreneurship lies in our redemptive purpose, to find purpose for our businesses, because we are not building businesses for ourselves, we are building businesses to employ people. I was sharing with, I think, my wife last week that we take our calling for granted, but today when I was interviewing people, I realized that there are people who are sitting there who are crying to get jobs, who are crying to feed their families, and our calling is basically to create those opportunities for those people and build sustainability and build companies that will last beyond us, beyond my son's generation, that will find these businesses, this businesses running. So I think from my side, I live by one motto, which says that in everything that you do, do it as you're doing it for the Lord. So it also speaks to the issue of staying in one market for some time, just to understand better the market and how things work. But with all that being said, thank you very much, family, for taking the time to come and listen to my journey. It has been an awesome journey. I'm also quite excited to see what God is doing with us through this business, and I feel we're at a point where it's not even about us anymore. It's about solving problems in this world that God sees that we have to sort of solve, and He's equipped us to do His work through this business. So thank you once again for taking the time. I hope my story will inspire some of you guys to pursue your dreams and your visions that you've got, and most importantly, I think, looking at my journey, looking back at most of the things we have achieved now, when I look at my diaries from 2015, 2016, some of those things were written there. So it's important that you write down your vision, as small as it may be. Some of the first transactions of this company were done in a diary. I still have that diary where I used to write operational costs, write down how much we need to buy stuff, write down how much we need to pay salaries. I mean, 11 years ago, our salary, we were paying about 4.5 thousand rand as salary. Today, we are sitting maybe at a salary of about 450,000. So it's those things that you write down that really motivate you, because they keep you accountable. When you go back and look at it, you are forced to go and try it out. So write your things down, diarize your things, make sure that you always go back and sort of revisit what you have written down, and try by all means to accomplish it. But I think for me, your dream and your vision must wake you up. So my alarm clock is 4 a.m. in the morning, but it doesn't wake me up anymore, because I've got something that burns inside of me, something that wakes me up even when I'm sleeping, something that pushes me to become a better person. And I think once we find that thing in ourselves, it allows us to sort of grow and sort of fulfill God's purpose for our lives. So thank you very much. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my story, and I'm going to open it up for questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Kwakwa. I'm sure people are giving virtual applauses and standing ovations wherever they are. There's a lot of love coming from the people. We are also so much inspired by your story. Personally, I have also just started Googling toilets, mobile toilets. How can I get into this business as well? It seems to be working very well. So there are a few questions that are coming through from the chat. One of the questions is, as someone who comes from the poor background, how do you make sure that you contribute back to the community? What is it that you are doing? And then the second question is about navigating working and running a business at the same time. So how do you handle that kind of a pressure, especially that comes from the employers? So maybe you can take those questions and then we will take other questions after that.
Thank you so much, Nsundeni. Thank you for the questions, family. I think I'll speak to the first question, which speaks about coming from a poor background. I think for me the most important thing is love. If you have love for people, if you have love, everything sort of works itself out because you act from a point of love. So for us, giving is actually some of the things that we prioritize the most in the business. Giving to different causes, obviously, that God speaks to us about. And yeah, it sort of became first nature because with the little that we had, we always made sure that we give back to particular projects from a very, very early age. And there are projects that we have done in our community that some of them obviously we can speak about, but I think it all stems from just having the love for people and having the eye to see when something really doesn't make sense and it needs your intervention. But love it doesn't only speak to monetary things. It also speaks to being able to assist with your hands, being able to see the needs of others and see how best you can connect them with the right people or how best you can help them. And then I'll take the second question is managing your 8 to 4 and also the business. I think, like I said, that was a very testing time of the business because the employer wants their reports and the business needs attention. But one thing I can say is that you don't have an ordinary life if you do that. Like I said, I don't know what day it is today because my mind goes into work mode and you sort of focused on what you want to achieve. You go and do your 8 to 4, you come back and you put in the work. I remember would come back sometimes from events. I remember there was this one time we did an event at the Polokwane Cricket Club, which was on a Sunday. We did the event and we had to spend the whole night janitoring and helping people and cleaning the toilets. And then when I went to work, I literally walked from the cricket club to the hiking spot to go to work. And that was what had happened for the 5 years. But I think to speak to that again, while you are doing that, make sure that you are building the business because we get into a tendency of, yes, you're doing your 8 to 4, but you're also doing your side hustle. But the money for the side hustle, you're not building the business. You're actually using it for something else or buying liabilities with it. So it's quite important to understand that when you're doing that, for how long are you going to do it? And how much do you want to save up if you are going to doing it?
Thank you so much. I see a hand from Pastor Shosho. I will hand over to you. If you want to raise a hand, it's fine. You can raise a hand. And if you prefer sending a message on the chat, you can do that as well. Over to you, Pastor Shosho.
Thank you, Comrade Chairperson Nsundeni, and thanks a lot, Mr. Kwakwa. Quite inspiring. You know, I watched a movie a couple of months ago. I can't remember the title of the movie, but I think it's called Mr. Lou or something like that. And the tagline was the number one man in the number 2 business. And when I watched that movie, I kept thinking of you like all the time. That he is the number 1 man in the number 2 business. I mean, it was quite an inspiring movie that a man can start a business that just, you know, concerns itself with toilets. I wouldn't necessarily, until I met you and that guy, I would not have thought that someone could just think of a business and it's just in the number 2 business. But my question is actually, so what's the BHAG, as they say in English? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal? I mean, what's the big plan? What is it that when you look in the next 5-10 years you are seeing You know, what is it that drives you to do this and to say in the next 5-10 years this is what I'm seeing, and I'll listen on the radio. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Pastor Toto. And I guess you're right. We are the number one guys in the number two business. You know, I think a few years down the line, I had a dream where I was standing on top of. It was the office, but it sort of had upstairs, man. And I was standing there, and my wife and my two children were coming towards me. This is before even Chillers on Wheels was very clear in terms of where we're going. So I manufacture our own products, our own plastic products, including toilets. Yes, that will be one of our divisions. But we're also planning to branch out into all the provinces in Southern Africa, basically. So our plan is to basically go into South of Africa and also go into the manufacturing space. With the manufacturing space, we are currently in communication with a German company called Global, busy in negotiations now to try and get them to come and manufacture some of their products that they're manufacturing in Germany to come and manufacture them here. So we are currently in communication with that company, but like I said, the aim is for us to go to the top of the value chain. That will sort of allow us to create our own products. But yeah, basically plastic molding, that is basically what we're preparing for in the next 5 years. We have a vision to have create about 500 jobs in the next 5 years.
Thank you so much for that. Matsiri, so in the asking, what are the pros and cons of getting into a business with a friends, or with friends or a friend? And Kumi is asking also, what's been your biggest business mistake, and what particular lessons did you know from that mistake? Maybe if you can take those two questions.
I think in terms of friends, you need, most importantly, you need to find someone who your values align. That is quite important, because with me and my partner, things become a bit more easier because our values aligned, you know, and giving for us both as individuals as well is top of the priority list. So when we come and say someone needs a wheelchair, you know, it's not something that is foreign to him. When we talking about, like today, we just had interviews. We are stuck between two candidates. Our answer was that, okay, we don't know, let's go pray. So we're going to pray about it, then God will definitely order our steps, you know. So it's very important that you find someone that your values are aligned, but also quite important that you find someone who will have the skill that you need. Remember that in business, most of the time, you need to sort of focus on your strength and outsource your weaknesses. So that is how I work. I focus on my strength and make sure that I've got outsource my weaknesses. So find someone who brings in a set of skills that you don't have. That will help you grow faster, because if both of you have the same skill, then it sort of gets to a point where things don't move, because now you are sort of sitting in one position with the same skill. So I'd advise that get someone who really has a different skill than you have. Look, with family, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You know, I've seen a lot of families who have done it well, but obviously because they've structured their business in a way that really protects the business. So I think in the long run, the most important thing is also to put up systems that protect you from whatever may come, you know, from friends and family, you know. But obviously at the early stage of the business, that is quite hard to do. So it's just where you rely mostly on character. But as the business grows, like us now, we need to put measures in place that will protect the business, not only from us as directors, but also for our children's children. When they come, they need to find something that sort of governs on how and when do they need to do certain things. I think to speak to the second question, Rachidi, in terms of mistakes, I think while we were in business a few years ago, we sort of got into a business with with someone. I think we sort of had an idea to build a mobile charging station, and we were doing events and festivals and all of that, whereby you bring your phone, we charge it for you, and then you come back, it's full, we give it back to you. And we met someone who sort of said to us, we met them on Instagram, who said to us, look, I have the capital to sort of take this business and take it to the next level. And then we sort of agreed and said, okay, sharp. He said, come to Joburg, come to Sandton and see me. There we were. We took ourselves. We didn't even have cars at the time. Hiked, went to Johannesburg, got to Gautrain station. He came there. No, his drivers actually came there, picked us up in these nice cars, Maseratis and whatnot. We went to Moslo Hotel. We sat there. He had these lawyers, he had everyone there. Then he gave us a pitch about how he's going to make this thing work. Let's go on a 50-50 deal. And we sort of started a company with the person. And look, the company never really worked, because when it was time for him to give us money, he sort of started dodging us, not answering our phones. And at the time, we had already made quotations and plans to actually go to China and see some of the suppliers. We had already paid for our visas and our flight tickets. But we ended up going to China, just the two of us, and it was a life-changing experience. But I think we signed documents that we were not supposed to really sign, giving that person obviously 50% of the business, and also giving him the intellectual property of the idea that we had.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Instagram is usually not the best idea to start most of the things. Two questions coming through. Tiffany is saying, when you started to formalize your business, how easy or difficult was it to be compliant with the labor requirements and stuff like that? And is it really easy now? And Chopel is saying, since you started the business as a way to survive, how did you break out from that cycle of mouth? Please take those two questions.
I think with the issue regarding the labor requirements, and yeah, I think from the informal sector, we literally had the guys from the car washes to come and wash the toilets. The guy who was probably a taxi driver to come and drive and deliver for us while we're in the informal market. But once you get into a formal market, it's a different ball game altogether. Because now when you have someone who comes to work drunk, or who smokes dacha, for example, I think we had an issue with dacha with some of the guys, and they get to a mine and then they let them blow, and then they see that these guys are drunk and they're wearing your brand, so it sort of dents your brand. So we sort of, when we transitioned to the formal side of the business, we really had to do a lot of restructuring and go look for guys who really wanted to work, who really wanted more responsibility. But like I'm saying, obviously, when the business is still small, you can't afford to really have people who have been working for a while. You go for these local guys who think, no, as long as you can do 1, 2, 3, 4. That is fine. And as time goes, obviously, you have to improve your staff and have the right people who will do the job for you. I mean, we had issues where toilets were delivered to funerals, and the clients would be furious. So we got to a point where we said, no, you know what, enough is enough. We are moving now, we're making a bit of money. Let us also go and put this money to the right people. But I also think one of the biggest challenges is that we first want to rush to paying ourselves first. And I think that is one mistake that we normally make. So I always recommend that if you've got an 8 to 4, for example, that is your money. You can use it however. But make sure that the business side of things, you employ the right people and you learn to do things right the first time. Because if you're gonna go back and keep trying things or fixing things, you're gonna waste a lot of money. So do things right the first time and employ the right people when you grow and you have the money. Don't say when you have the money, now you start paying yourself more money. No. When you have more money, it's time for you to put structures in place, Make sure that you're affiliated to certain bodies. Make sure that you have the right certification, because most of the time people, especially of our color, cry about issues of access to market. But that is basically being caused by not being competent enough to go into a space like Anglo. I mean, the standards there are very high, But once you get into a space like that, it's easy to work at all their minds because you are compliant. We have guys working now at DBS, like I said, at Smelters, at Kusile, at Midupi, and all we had to do was sort of get a certain set of documents and make sure that we are compliant. It cost us money, but it will last us a very long time, and it will open doors that it won't open for others. It's actually a very big competitive advantage to have over your competitors. To speak to the issue about can I get a rephrase of the second question, please?
Okay. So the second question which came through was about how you started the business. You were trying to survive from hand to mouth as an extra income. So how did you navigate the pressure of trying to survive while building the business?
So I think for me, the most important thing about that was, remember, I was in a lot of debt in a way. So the first thing I did, if I remember, when I downloaded something called, is it TransUnion or something like that, to see who do I owe and how much do I owe and how can I close this debt that I've got. And I sort of started closing that debt slowly, and cutting on some of the things that were unnecessary. And I think that really helped me a lot to close down on some of this debt, and make sure that you are clean. You don't have necessary debt. That I think will relieve you of the stress of having to worry about hand to mouth, because hand to mouth is just basically like loading. The supply doesn't meet the demand, so you just have to make sure that you reduce the geyser. So you have to reduce some of these things for you at least to be left with something to go start your own business. But the trick also is exactly that issue that I'm talking about, whereby you start working and you start making a lot of debt. I can tell you, all of my colleagues had houses, and I knew for a fact if I got a house, I was never going to resign. I stayed with my aunt for the longest time. I stayed with my grandmother. I was avoiding having this debt that I know if I resign and I can't afford to pay for this house, then I'll be definitely blacklisted. But I think with us, the most important thing that we've always agreed on as partners is that you starve the lifestyle and you feed the money cow. The money cow being the business, but the lifestyle comes last. As we speak as directors, as with so many employees, we drive in one car, we stay in our one house in Polokwane, because we don't see the need for us to be driving around in two cars that are very expensive, or staying in two different houses, but we have houses in Joburg. So some of the things is just cutting on and making sure that you are really honest with yourself about things that you need and things that you don't need.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Kwakwa, and thank you to everyone who has participated and contributed to this talk today. So some of the questions we have noted in the chat. Unfortunately, we are now out of time. So the session, for those who are asking, is being recorded, and it will be shared on our YouTube channel, which is CJC Africa. So if you can check in the next 2 weeks or so, you will find it there. So just as we close, what will be your closing remarks, Mr. Kwakwa?
I think my closing remarks would I'd just like to thank God also, because Our story mostly is about changing lives. It's really not about us, as I said. To the 43 or 44 people that are listening, this story or this journey is mostly about inspiring the next generation of leaders, the next generation of entrepreneurs. So every time you look at us, we wanted people, especially people of our color, to have a reference to say if they have done it, we can also do it. So we want to be an example to the generations to come that we are capable of doing it, and to continue touching lives and making sure we also dominate, the spirit of Christ throughout the world. When we go out there and show our excellence, people see Christ through our actions.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you to you who has joined us today as part of this conversation. At the CDC, we do this every month on the third Thursday of the month, and we'll be having other interesting topics in the future.